all for joining our webinar series, Lesson from the Trenches. So, as all of you know, as our community starts to stay at home, we're all faced with a whole new type of workspace, one where dogs, cats, and kids become our coworkers, and our homes become an extension of a corporate workplace. ForeScout is starting to see about a 40% drop in smartphone on campus, indicating that a majority of users are no longer on campus. Along with this, we're seeing about a 15% drop in PC usage as users who can take their workstations with them are starting to connect back to the corporate campus via VPN. And it is in this environment that we, the network engineers and security team, tasked with keeping up that high bar of keeping our corporate environment safe and extend our security to this extended perimeter. Today, I'm proud to introduce one of us. He will share his experience at HubSpot in securing the remote workforce with ForeScout. He is Nick Duda, Principal Security Engineer, Power User, and an orchestration and automation genius. Now, before I pass the baton to Nick, I want everyone in the audience to please ask questions about the technology, ideas, or anything about ForeScout community Slack channel in the chat. Nick and I will take your questions. Now, please join me in welcoming Nick Duda. Over to you, Nick.
Thanks, Howie. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Nick Duda. I just wanted to go over a quick intro of myself, not too long. I'm the Principal Security Engineer at HubSpot. And a couple things to note. I've been kind of working in this field for roughly 20 years or so with really a strong focus on what I like to call the defensive security, the blue team focus. I've got a lot of passion for protecting the corporate enterprise, the employees and whatnot. And you can just imagine how excited I was when ForeScout kind of came into my life, as it's really an excellent tool for handling a lot of the endpoints and the servers and everything. So definitely a big fan of this. Most will consider me somewhat of an expert here. I've been early FSCE certification. But a couple things I really want to kind of start with here is one of the reasons why I've asked Howie to join me in this webinar is kind of a quick story. It goes back about a year and a half ago where I was trying to implement my first integration with ForeScout, and I came across a white paper on an integration that I was trying to do, and it didn't make sense. It wasn't that intuitive. And I looked deep within the notes and I saw a name called Howie. And I wanted to talk to Howie, so I just kind of hit him up on LinkedIn just out of nowhere, and he responded, and kind of that was the intro to us and some amazing things that we've accomplished with integration. So I really appreciate you joining me, Howie. So let's dive in on why we're all here. All of us are in uncharted territories lately. Working remotely or working from home is becoming the new norm, at least for the foreseeable future. We needed to think outside the box on what security is like during these circumstances, and we needed to adapt quickly. So what I'm about to cover is just one area on how we're addressing remote workers in today's world. There are so many other tools and processes that play into protecting our users and devices, but most of this webinar is going to be focused on how the ForeScout platform is helping us do this. So you might be thinking that what we've uncovered isn't anything new. However, it shifts our focus on how we need to think about security at scale and what we need to do in short order to keep visibility and control. The first issue here is a home network that's typically not built with security in mind, right? So they often have less wireless security, weaker passwords, flat networks shared with personal and IoT devices, and they're actually shared with highly vulnerable devices connected to them. So this increases the overall risk across the board. Next, corporate devices that move off network might not have all the same protections as they do when they're in the office. So at HubSpot, we spent a good deal of time and resources to keep our devices and office network safe. We deploy technology, processes, and policy that might be focused on the physical office, but what happens when those devices transition off network? Can we identify and respond to those threats quickly? That was a big concern of ours. And last but not least is having continuous visibility and remediation into those assets. So what kind of protections do we have in place for devices that go off network? For technology that protects endpoints by VPN, do we enforce the use of the VPN to close those security gaps? If not, what technology can we use, and will it allow us to respond to threats fast enough? And with more and more companies adopting the cloud, there might be a shift away from using the VPN to access internal resources. Now let's go over some of the things that we've improved upon to help keep visibility and control of our devices moving in the right direction. Again, I'll mention that there are so many other tools and processes that play into securing remote workers, and I'm really going to focus on how ForeScout helped HubSpot play a big part in this. The first, we've made improvements in how ForeScout performs device classification. I'm going to show you some of the ways we improve classification for remote devices using the platform. Then we tweak policies and optimize configurations to obtain richer visibility into our remote devices. Once we have a good device classification baseline for remote devices, we need to get visibility into those hooks quickly and accurately. All companies are different in how they make use of the VPN. One observation I've had is that VPN users might not stick around for long periods of time. Unlike the physical office, where a device is usually connected for the entire working day, remote users connect to the VPN to accomplish what they need to, then disconnect. We need to make sure that the ForeScout policies most important to us are configured as efficiently as possible. And then comes my favorite improvement, integrating other technologies into the ForeScout platform. This is my sweet spot. Data from external sources further enrich the data that can be used in policies and orchestrations. I think you're really going to love what I'm going to show you. So before we dive in, there are a few things we need to take into consideration. For most of us, these are things we already have implemented with managing on-premise devices protected by ForeScout, but it might need some additional work for remote users. Visibility within the platform is outstanding. The more sources you feed it, the richer it becomes, and it works more efficiently. In order for the ForeScout magic to happen, it will need to see the devices connected to our VPN. Are we providing ForeScout with the appropriate emission data such as net flow, span, DHCP requests, and other data points? Are our endpoints managed? Are we using a ForeScout agent or are we not? And why does this really matter? So agentless versus agent each have their own pros and cons. We need to take these into consideration for visibility over the VPN. For example, are the right ports open or allowed between ForeScout and the remote device? Some systems have network location awareness and might react differently when not connected to the physical office. And do our endpoints have firewall policies that differ for non-domain networks? And are those rules configured properly? Depending on the method of management, different configurations might need to be applied to the endpoint and network. And I'll talk about these a little bit later. And can ForeScout communicate to devices on our VPN subnets? So in addition to having access to the VPN subnets themselves, does ForeScout have the appropriate access to talk to the devices connected to the VPN? We need to think about things like VLANs, switch port configuration, and access control lists. All right, so let's get started with some classification improvements we made. Some of these changes might seem small, but they do have a big impact, as you'll see. So when I showed this slide to Howie the other day, I got the most perfect response I could have asked for from him. He simply said, I never thought of that. It totally makes sense. So why did we start by separating out primary classification policy and VPN classification policy? For speed and accuracy. By focusing our classification policy only on VPN devices, as you'll see in the coming slides, we can fine-tune the sub-rules to run more efficiently. This in turn will allow the platform to gain visibility faster and to start executing on other more important policies. And as you can see in the screenshots I have on this slide, I'm making use of ForeScout segments to achieve this. The VPN segment has child segments for all of the gateways we have around the globe. Next, we tune the VPN classification subrules for the device type likely to connect to the VPN. For example, gaming consoles are probably not connecting to our VPN, so we can save valuable resources while quickly classifying the devices that matter. Keep in mind, though, we are still adding devices to the same internal ForeScout group that other classification policies are also doing. So the quicker we can classify a device and add it to a group, the quicker other policies can begin doing their job. And I'll say by doing this, we observed a noticeable improvement in how fast devices were being classified as they were connecting to the VPN. One of the best enhancements we made here was to make use of ForeScout conditions that are more likely to have success with VPN-connected devices. One of the benefits of the platform is that we can customize and tune classification policies however we want. We can use what seems like unlimited possibilities for conditions, so it's important to use conditions that can execute quickly. For example, it's probably not a good idea to use open port on a device to establish that it's a Windows device. Not only would that present false positives, but it takes time to port scan an endpoint. Each ForeScout deployment is different, and you'll need to find out what works best for you. I'll be touching on this one later, but one way we improved this was by leveraging data that the Palo Alto Protect agent was presenting to the gateways on operating system type. The global Protect agent already knows the client operating system, so if we can pull that data quickly, then our classification policy becomes more efficient. Earlier, I mentioned how agent versus agentless considerations come into play. What we found is that Secure Connector for us helps out big time. The agentless approach uses admission and time-based policies, which isn't bad. It's really efficient. However, we found that devices come and go from the VPN, and many policies that use the default settings implement an 8-hour recheck interval. We wanted to be faster than that without having to individually tune all of our policies. Secure Connector provided event-based updates, which is critical on systems that come and go from the VPN randomly. As configurations change on the endpoint, such as registry keys, they will update ForeScout in real time. Like most agent-based deployments, the agent can also quickly provide details about the host back to ForeScout. For example, the agent already knows it's running on a Windows host, so it tells the ForeScout appliance immediately when a connection is reestablished. The Secure Connector also provides visibility faster as devices connect. So as soon as Secure Connector reestablishes a connection to the managing appliance, the data just rolls in. And with Windows devices, Secure Connector can even control access to external devices, which is something that we're exploring on using here at HubSpot. Finally, we made use of third-party integrations in our classification policy. I hinted at this already, but I'll dive in a little deeper into the integrations that help us most. So now that we're feeling good about how remote devices are being classified, we wanted to make sure that other policies we have are running as efficient as they can. So I'll go over some of the ways we improve performance in our policies. Custom conditions. I think this is one of the most powerful features of the platform. I also think it's one administrators are least familiar with. I found so much value in this feature that I actually published a YouTube video on how to use it. Definitely need to check it out. URL's right there. Custom conditions allow you to do just that. Create your very own condition based on properties of your choice. You can then use this condition throughout all of the policies. If and when you need to update your condition, you only need to do it in one place opposed to all of the policies. It's super powerful. We made custom conditions for global Protect data based on the region the devices were connecting from. We also made a custom condition for what it meant to be a company-issued device, which goes beyond whether a device is simply managed by ForeScout. And in my last check, I think that custom condition had over 15 properties assigned to it. So here we go again with my favorite topic, third-party integrations. Asking a device directly for information, especially over a VPN connection, could result in a delay of policy logic. Think about what you might be asking a device to provide. Are you executing a script to comb the file system for something? What about checking for Windows vulnerabilities? We all know how big those Microsoft tab files can get. Or even asking a bunch of things like antivirus and encryption status. With proper integrations into third-party technology, especially cloud-based ones, we can pull back security compliance information such as encryption status and patch compliance. We can also pull back general data about the device such as name, software installed, and things like hardware resources. For example, at HubSpot, we deploy Macintosh systems to employees and also utilize Jamf for management. Endpoints are constantly checking into Jamf, whether they are on-prem or off-campus. So why not leverage that data in a policy? The same for cloud-based EDR software, and I'll be covering both of these in just a moment. So if anyone's ForeScout implementation looks like mine, then having 200 or more policies might be typical. So you can imagine how difficult it might be to locate policies quickly, especially when changes are needed. Even if you have a small number of policies, it's important to keep them organized. As we introduce more and more VPN-based policies, we needed to make sure we can locate them quickly and action upon them, especially ones performing restrictive actions like booting devices off the VPN. We found that by organizing policies into granular, well-descriptive folder structure allowed us to navigate the UI more efficiently. And for those that are on ForeScout version 8.2 using the asset dashboard, will heavily benefit from an organized folder tree. Trust me, the ForeScout users will love it. Okay, now the moment I'm most excited to talk about, how we leverage some third-party integrations to help us with a remote workforce. I'm really excited to show this. But first off, I really wanted to point everyone to this amazing VPN integration primer guide that Howie and Andre put together. I can't take any credit for this one. For those unaware, ForeScout has an open integration module, which allows the platform to integrate with nearly any external source. So for example, integrations can be established to read and write data to databases, such as MySQL, MSSQL, and web services via API calls. ForeScout recently published a new module called iExtend Connect that takes OIM to the next level by allowing us to write applications at scale. The possibilities are pretty much endless on what you can do here, and this primer guide is an example of that. I'll have a link on where you can go to download this guide shortly, and I'm sure Howie would love to speak to this towards the end. This integration is probably the most utilized within our remote workforce. As I went over in my earlier slides, this integration allowed us to pull in data directly from Global Protect Gateway on the devices connected. We leverage this data in numerous policies to help maintain VPN visibility and control. We didn't stop at just device visibility though. With this integration, we were able to take the public IP of the device connecting to the VPN, and through another integration we wrote with IPstack, we were able to pull in all of the geolocation data. This geolocation data can be used in all sorts of policies. For example, we have the ability to track and disconnect devices that connect from specific regions or countries. And with the latest Global Protect Connect app, we can now disconnect devices from the VPN based on policy action. This integration with CrowdStrike might be the most valuable one we've implemented for our remote workforce on the platform. I'm a huge CrowdStrike fan. I think what they're doing in the EDR space is truly amazing. CrowdStrike holds a lot of data on the devices running its agent. But once again, we're able to pull the data into ForeScout and make use of it in numerous ways. The most important thing is knowing that our remote devices have CrowdStrike installed and that it's running and up to date. We then make use of other data such as operating system to help classify devices, as I was explaining earlier. But here's where the real value comes into play. It might be hard to see in the screenshot, but you'll notice the IP address is missing on the host. That's because these hosts are not physically connected to one of our offices or even a VPN. These are devices that ForeScout hasn't directly seen, or they were purged from the database from inactivity. The CrowdStrike integration allows us to bring in off-campus devices along with all the data CrowdStrike knows about them and create host entries within ForeScout. This is truly bridging off-campus devices into the ForeScout platform so we can continue to keep tabs on their security posture. All of this sounds amazing, right? Well, we also have the ability to perform CrowdStrike network contains on endpoints that fail ForeScout compliance policies. I like to call this NAC in the cloud. I can't speak to the other EDR integrations, such as Carbon Black and Cylance that ForeScout also integrates with, but this has been an absolute game changer for us. And finally, our integration with Jamf. Jamf is an Apple MDM platform that gives us management of Macintosh systems. We deploy a lot of Macintosh devices, and being able to pull in data directly from the technology that manages them helps our policies run more efficiently. Endpoints also checking a Jamf when off campus without a VPN. So we know that we're pulling the latest data on endpoints from it. Jamf is providing us with hardware and software specs as well as device configurations such as full disk encryption status. This integration allowed us to maintain visibility and control of off-campus Macintosh systems. And with the latest iExtend Connect app, we now gain the ability to assign devices to Jamf policies based on counteract policies. This gives us the ability to control management tasks of off-campus devices. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this all up with some call to action and answer any questions you might have. The first I'm going to be a little biased here is that everyone should join the ForeScout Slack community after this webinar is done. I started the Slack community about 1.5 years ago as a way for ForeScout customers to collaborate in real time on the platform. At first, it was a handful of ForeScout power users who were able to bounce questions and problems off each other and get answers super quickly, often within minutes. At this point, it started to grow legs. And like the saying from Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And that's exactly what they did. The Slack community is home to over 550 members, ranging from hardcore power users to ForeScout employees, partners, and new customers. We have over 30 channels dedicated to all aspects of the platform. Some channels are automated to pull in ForeScout news and product updates, while others to support users on their ForeScout certification journey. And once COVID-19 hit, everyone started working from home. We wanted a way to help break up the day for the community members. So we introduced a daily Zoom call for anyone to join and talk about whatever. We've had Zoom calls where we talk about how everyone is coping with working from home, and calls where ForeScout product managers talk about new features. You can't get any closer to having an impact like you can here. So yeah, come join us. We won't bite. And I mentioned earlier I'd provide the link to the VPN integration primer guide. So here it is. Once again, thanks Howie and Andre for putting this together. It has so much data on how you can integrate and manage devices over the VPN. It's exactly what we need right now. And for my last slide, another shameless plug on some of the OIM integrations I put together. All in all, I've got about 8 integration guides that walk you step by step through implementing the integration. If you're interested in writing your own integrations with OIM, you can use these guides for examples on how to do it. Also, let me know if you need help with integration. You can find me on the Slack community. And that's it. I just wanted to thank Howie and ForeScout for having me on, and I'll pass it back over to Howie.
Hey, thank you very much, Nick. That was an awesome presentation. We're open for questions, so if you have any questions about this, please feel free to type it out in the chat channel and we'll answer your question. Nick, we have a question here. It's about your use case around your remote users. It reads, how are you using CrowdStrike to get visibility into off-premise users?
Yeah, so like what I went over on one of my slides, the CrowdStrike integration with ForeScout is brilliant in the sense that it can bring in off-campus devices that have not connected physically to the office or the VPN to bring that visibility in. So it basically establishes a connection, it brings in all of that data, and it presents it to us. So we're able to use the CrowdStrike data to look at the the CrowdStrike posture, as well as any of the other data that the CrowdStrike platform is presenting.
So does that mean you're doing a posture assessment of those devices on those endpoints?
So the posture assessment that we're doing on those devices, it depends on the technology that we're using to do that. If we need to use ForeScout for posture assessment, then those devices do need to talk to the ForeScout platform. So it would require that they either connect to a physical office or jump on the VPN. The integration the data that we're using from the integration now is to keep tabs on the devices that are out there off campus and their CrowdStrike posture itself. I know that CrowdStrike's got some really interesting features that they're working on as far as doing posture assessments and things like that. And hopefully we see some sort of improvements to the integration over time where we can actually perform those posture assessments for off-campus through ForeScout.
Awesome. And we have another question here. It's about OIM. We all love our OIM integrations. It reads, does OIM have limited ability for Palo and Jamf integrations? So I guess what's really asking here is, what can it do and what are the limitations for this integration?
Sure. I guess the way that I would answer that, and it goes beyond Palo Alto and Jamf, is the way I would answer it is anything that the APIs can allow you to do, that's the limitation. So the current integration that we have in place with Jamf is making use of pulling back all of the data on a device that's within Jamf. So the limitations as far as the Jamf would probably be the visibility and assigning the policies. And on the Palo Alto front, especially with the new Connect app that was just released, we have the ability to do disconnects now. So again, it really goes back to what I was just saying, that whatever the API allows you to do, you can write those integrations, those custom integrations through OIM or the Connect app.
And how do you find out what the limitations are? Do you look up the API documentation and look at what it's available to the users?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the ways that I go about introducing integrations is I think of all the technologies that we've purchased. All right. So I look at it from a tech debt perspective and how I can orchestrate and provide value across all these platforms. And I look at these technologies and I say, do they hold data about a device? And is that of value to me? Can I use that in some way to orchestrate with another piece of technology? And that's the path that I go for doing those integrations.
Awesome. I love it. I love working with OIM with you. We have a lot of great ideas. And if anyone else in the audience has questions about OIM, we'll be in the Slack channel answering questions all day. There's another question that came in here. It is, I have a client that's managed by, if I have a client managed by Secure Connector, but they are in a private network, would it be possible to push updates to the client?
So I guess a lot depends on how things are configured. I mentioned a lot about firewall rules and things like that. But strictly speaking, from a ForeScout to Secure Connector approach, is as long as there's connectivity between a ForeScout appliance and a device running Secure Connector, that's your tunnel. So you're able to push updates and run scripts and connection is established.
Yes, and that actually includes being able to, if you can access the endpoint and the Secure Connector can call back to ForeScout, that could include things like pushing updates to the clients as well. So this is all possible. There's another question here for you. It is, great job, guys. So if you can answer that, that would be awesome. No, here's another one for us. So are there control abilities for Jamf Palo Alto integration with OIM to affect endpoints such as disconnecting an endpoint through Palo Alto or forcing updates through Jamf? And I know this is something that you touched on, but if you can kind of talk about that again.
Yeah, I'll start by saying again, whatever an API allows you to do, you can build it. You can build it through OIM, or you can create the app itself. But specifically to the question, so we got the integrations built out so that we can do disconnecting to the endpoints on the Palo Alto side. It's in place, it's tested, we're using it, it worked out really well. And then on the Jamf side, with the latest iXtend Connect module, we can now assign Jamf policies to an endpoint. So it kind of, again, it bridges that gap between an on-prem system and an off-campus system. So we're able to extend that visibility and controls, via those actions.
Absolutely. And for those of you that are running ForeScout 8.1.4 and above, you can use the iXtend Connect app if you have the OIM. If you're running 8.1.3 and before, you can always get Nick Duda's code for OIM over at his GitHub. And that's where he'll walk through all the use cases, fantastic documentation on how to guide, how to build it out, how to create a policy, how to create API calls, how to even set up the part of it from Global Protect. And from a Jamf perspective, Jamf has this concept of task or list, something you put an endpoint into and things are pushed out. And those APIs are available as well. I'll have to check to see if it's in the GitHub repository, but it's absolutely something you can do with either the Jamf app or with OIM. Great questions, guys. Perfect. So, Nick, thank you for spending the time with us. I'm a big fan, as you know, from the very first interaction when you were like, hey, Howie, how's it going? And I was like, hey, you're a legend. So I want to thank you for the time you spent with us. And we have one final question coming through, and they're asking, what are you using as unique identifier for endpoint? Is it a host name? Is it a MAC address? Or what is it? Do you want to answer this, or would you like me to take it?
Well, I mean, let me take a stab at it from at least the integrations that I've been doing. In one regard, the unique identifier can be anything that exists within the ForeScout platform, as well as what can be queried via an API. Specifically for the integrations with something like Palo Alto, we're doing it based on the IP address. And that's important to note because in Palo Alto's Global Protect, those that are using it, the MAC address is a common MAC address amongst all systems. So that would be a really great identifier. And on the Jamf side, it can actually, with OIM, it can be performed in a couple different ways. Each one has a pro and con, but I've written it to do it based on MAC address as well as the actual device name. So I've been leveraging things like ForeScout's DHCP host name tag, as well as the NBT host tag. So those are the typical ones that I work with.
Fantastic. Now, this is an opinion question, so I'd like for you to give your open, honest opinion. This customer has been asked to provide a high-level overview of OIM-specific use cases in the customer stack environment. Initially, they were very hot on deck and really liked the speed of the data calls and queries, but it is where Web API where they really found the power, where they found numerous use cases in that it's almost limitless around the way we can enable ForeScout platform to respond to the task. So here's the question. What are your thoughts on Web API and how it's evolving in the iXtend Connect environment?
Yeah, so iXtend Connect it's new and it's very powerful. And I would encourage reaching out to ForeScout for kind of the official pitch and how it works. But essentially, iXtend Connect is putting the power in the customer's hands to actually write these integrations through Python code. Essentially, the possibilities really become endless as far as what you can write in code to integrate with APIs. So I think some of the things worth mentioning here where you gain some power is in performance is that with a single app that you can write, you can make single calls to a web service to pull back large chunks of data and then parse that data and present that to ForeScout rather than making numerous individual web API calls. So it's evolving. It's very powerful. I would highly encourage people checking this out.
Very cool. And as a reminder to the folks out there, Web API is really intended for an external service to pull data from ForeScout, and it supplements the OIM integration as well as the iExtend Connect, where it is a code on ForeScout that can be used to pull data or to push data from ForeScout's perspective. So the initiator in the iExtend Connect is going to continue to be ForeScout, whereas when the Web API, you can pull the data from your SecOps tool, you can build your own dashboards, you can do whatever you want from an operational perspective and continue to get a data that we are pulling through our native integration there. So definitely a complementary piece. All right. Looks like that was all our questions, Nick. Did you have a good time on this webinar?
Yeah, this was great. Again, thanks for having me on. It's very exciting for me, very passionate about this stuff, and I really love thinking outside the box on the things that we can do with ForeScout. So again, thank you for having me.
Very good. Where can we find you if we have more questions?
You can find me on the Slack community. So definitely check it out. It was in the slides, but if you head over to ForeScoutCommunity.com, it's a landing page that asks you to fill out a simple form, and we'll send you an invite to the Slack community.
Yeah. Do you have a Twitter we can follow, Instagram, TikTok?
I've got a Twitter, but not on there too often. But you can find me reach out on LinkedIn. You can hit me on Twitter. But really, for ForeScout related things, the Slack community is the way to get my attention quickly.
Perfect. Hey, thank you very much again, Nick. It's been awesome having you on this call. And thank you everyone who asked questions. There were a couple more questions. We'll take them. I will reply to you on text. And good luck, everyone. Have a great day and have a safe time at home. Take care.
Great. Thank you.